Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill, and I have both hands right here. And I'm not in the bed anymore. I'm not in the bedroom, not in the bed. Here we are in my home office. Um, Finally back on the laptop. So now we can look like a real high quality production. And I'm not letting us down, just chilling and
Mind
relaxing in
freak.
bed.
This is the first sight you're seeing in a while, ladies and gentlemen. Take
Yeah,
it in.
so I'm here. The charger for the laptop is here, so the laptop is in perfect top condition. It's plugged up to the charger right now, so we don't even have to worry about anything. But we're here. We're talking college football playoff time. Look, we're getting closer and closer to that national championship. Um, so long to the first round bye, it appears. That's something we'll get into here a little bit later. Um, but first, let's talk about some of these other bowl games that happened before our quarterfinal games, specifically the two that we picked in this game, because man, oh man, did my game picks go poorly for this week. I had two picks that were right, and I'm not saying that I would have picked against these teams. We'll never know because there's not a world where I'm not a fan of these teams. The world we live in, I am a fan of these teams. But it happened to be the two teams that I'm a fan of that I would have picked no matter what came out on top, and all my other picks kind of flopped here. So not my best week here on the Bull Take podcast, but let's start with the game that happened first. Michigan stunning the entire country, really, with a 19-13 victory over number 11 Alabama. And look, I think Sharon Moore and the Michigan Wolverines in these last two games, especially, have shown the culture that's been built at Michigan and what this team can be. To me, these last two games have been a great recruiting pitch for the transfer portal for anybody who's undecided this year and for future prospects coming up in the next couple of years just out of high school. I mean, to me, this is a huge statement. You go into Columbus, you maintain this dominant run you've had of beating down the Buckeyes, and you do it in their home field when they're a team that's going to be playing for a national championship potentially, and you're a team who is going to be playing in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Um, and they get the job done. They get a huge win. And then to add that on, they go and play in this ReliaQuest Bowl against the Alabama Crimson Tide, who still have a pretty good team. And, not to mention, just saying, Michigan had way more opt-outs in this game than Alabama did. There was no reason Michigan had no business on paper being in this game, and they come out and win 19-13. This is an exciting future because to me, they played nitty-gritty football these last 2 weeks, just dirty football that nobody wants to play. Man, just your thoughts on kind of where Michigan's at and where Alabama's at after all this.
With Michigan, to me, they figured out who they were. I think that's the main thing was throughout most of the start of the season, they didn't know what team they were going to be with some of the players. And by the end, they knew what they had to do to win games, and that's why they were able to finish the season strong. And you got to remember, Michigan. This is supposedly a down year for them, and still an 8-5 season is not a bad down year. I would kill for that to be a bad year or a down year in Fayetteville. I would kill for
Yeah.
that to be a down year. But yeah, they controlled the clock. They ran the football like we all expected them to. And you also have the number one QB recruit in the entire country coming in next year to come along with it. So things are looking up for Michigan to say the least there. And then for Alabama, the whole argument, I'm glad we can finally everyone can shut up about the argument about them or SMU. Yeah, that's all I say about Alabama. They'll be fine. They'll get more five-star talent next year. They'll be in the argument next year. But I'm just glad we can shut up about them potentially getting in over SMU.
Yeah, I'm with you here. This was a nice kind of open, closed door situation here. Look, you had the talk, you had the chat, you had the potential to say it. But, hypothetical games don't get you to a national championship. The real ones do. And the real ones have told a completely different story for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Another team we'll talk about, who people would not necessarily arguing for during the committee, but arguments being made after the committee had made their calls. And that was South Carolina. the Illini and the Gamecocks, they got chippy in this one. 21-17 Illinois victory. And this kind of spoils the fun run that SC had to kind of close out this season, where they became this dark horse to maybe steal a spot in the college football playoff. And they just have this exciting core. And it's been really interesting to see kind of what Brett Bielema has done at Illinois here. He's really turned the program around. Now a big bowl game win over an SEC school. A little bit of taunting on the field, which was fun to see. Just all in all, a great game for Illinois. And with Luke Altmaier coming back next year, this sets up some real potential for Illinois to make even more noise than they did this year.
I mean, it really does. A lot of guys coming back for them offensively. Lost some pieces on the O line, graduates or transfer portal, so that'll take some time to rebuild. But if there's anyone that I trust to rebuild an offensive line, it would probably be Brett Bielema. So I don't think that'll be an issue there. Yeah, great win for them, South Carolina. Again, they have a lot of talent coming back as well. So this is a sign, and this was, like you said, one of the few games where all the players were really in this game. The only really significant one missing was Rocket Sanders, probably was the only key main player that wasn't playing in the game for either side. Yeah, but it was great. These are two teams that are going to have a lot coming back next year. Would not be surprised at all to see, honestly, both of them ranked in the preseason top 25 next year because this was a fun physical game. Got a little chippy, like you said, Bielema doing some taunting and then Shane Beamer wanting to go and fight him. Listen, Shane, I have no problem with you being, fired up and stuff, but you got to know the matchup here. Okay? You're going against Brett Bielema here, a guy who, number one, is probably way taller than you. Number two, look, let's just say it like it is. He outweighs him by a good bit. Let's just say
Yeah.
it like it is. Yeah, but it was a fun environment for a bowl game to say the least. There, it was great seeing all that.
Yeah, very rare nowadays to kind of see these bowl games with, like you said, full of this talent. And what really helped, like you said, a lot of these guys will be back next year for both teams. And just that fun environment. Both teams really wanted this win, I think is another thing that was really fun to see. They played this game like the national championship. Like, again, how chippy it got on the field, even between the coaches, showed how bad from top to bottom these two teams wanted to win this game. And I just think that that's awesome and good for college football. And it's another point to the real college football fans out there like me and you, and another point against the people who say bowl games don't matter. Because clearly they do. If they didn't matter, why would Lenore Sellers play in this game? Why not just rest him till next year and not risk, the potential injury that could keep him out from the start of next year? Same can go for anybody on Illinois or anybody else on South Carolina. If the bowl game doesn't matter, why are the coaches about to get into a fist fight on the field? And why are the starters, the first stringers who've been playing all year, playing in the final game of the season? It's just a pointless argument at this point. We sound like a broken record. But again, it's just another point for us and another point against them. Um, that takes us into our quarterfinal games. And look, it's just safe to say I'm going to open the debate up with it now, presuming everybody knows the results, and we'll just talk about it. But look, coming into these quarterfinal games, there was rumblings amongst people to decide the college football playoff bracket, that maybe they should do away with the bye. Coming into these like days before this game, they were saying maybe 3 weeks is too long, and the teams had not played games yet. They were just saying maybe 3 weeks of no football is too long when you've given the other team just played last week, especially with how sound some of these teams won last week. Um, so we come in, and all of our top seeds that got a bye fall. They all get defeated. Only one of the games is particularly close. Uh, and so it does open the door for this conversation to be had. Now, it would have to be a unanimous vote for it to be changed next year. I think 2026 is when they're talking about doing is when the next rediscussion was supposed to happen after the 12 team. So I think in 2026 it would be a majority vote, but for it to happen next year, it'd need to be unanimous. But after what we saw this year, I think it will be unanimous if anything's proposed at all. But my real question is not will they get rid of it, unless of course you think they won't get rid of it. But I think they will. I think if they were already talking about it before all four top seeds lost, I don't know why they wouldn't be in on it now. But my real thought process is if you get rid of the buys, you can't keep 12 teams. You have to go to eight or you have to go up to 16. Um, I know where I stand on this because when we talked about the expansion of the playoff and they hadn't really talked about what it was going to be yet, we had both thrown out eight. And then when the 12 team came out, I had said, well, if you're going to go 12, why not go 16? So I stand on the camp of a 16 team playoff, open up four more spots. Um, I feel like that'd lead to a little less debates, and we could see some more deserving teams get in, like an SMU or an Indiana, and then you could still see a South Carolina or an Ole Miss or an Alabama get in with three losses. And also, to me, if you go to eight, you are punishing the teams that played in the first round game, and it's not their fault. They played in the first round game and had success. Um, if anything, it should be a punishment to the top four teams. You lost your bye, and now you have the potential to play number 16 Alabama, um, or number 16 South Carolina, who just went on a tear. I think personally that's where I stand. But your thoughts on expanding the playoff before we talk about these quarterfinal games?
Well, like I said, my opinion on it whenever the expansion happened was, the gradual progress. We go from 4 to 8. And then the next discussion go 8 to 12, 12, 16, et cetera, et cetera. But when they went from 4 to 12, yeah, I mean, it makes total sense that if you want to make sure there's enough room and you don't want the buys in it. Now, my personal opinion on it is I don't see a problem with having the buys. You win your conference championship, you get more time to rest. You get to watch full game film of the team before they play them. Now I get the I get the 3 weeks off, kind of throws it off. So maybe you kind of delay the playoff a little bit longer, before it gets started. Because you remember they played that first round maybe what, a week after the conference championship games. So
Yeah.
maybe you delay it out 1 week, have them play after having 2 weeks off, and then just continuously the next week and then the next week. That's to me how you could fix it. But to me, the buys, I don't see that as an issue, at least in my mind. You get a buy, you get to be healthier. You don't got to stress injuries that you could have. My big example would be a team like Georgia, who, there would have been even more question marks about Carson Beck had they not had the time to get ready and prepare Gunnar Stockton to start the game. Um, you look at teams like Oregon, they had some defensive injuries that cost them. They were 100% ready. Didn't help them in the game, obviously, but it gave them the time to get healthy there. And oh, oh, that's interesting. Austin, we got some breaking news that just
Okay.
broke. Carson Beck is entering the transfer portal.
That's a good
Mm,
call by him.
yeah.
I I don't know why he's going. Well, maybe there's money. There has to be money waiting on him.
My thinking
Um,
is he's doing it to enter the portal and see what he can get and see if it's more than what he would get if he goes to the draft. That's what I'm thinking with the move.
yeah, I think that's the right idea. For Carson Beck. Just while we're here. Look, I don't. He's what, a junior. I don't know why he declared for the NFL draft at all. He didn't have the greatest season. Now, this isn't a great quarterback class, so maybe if somebody likes what they saw, they'd be more willing to take him, just because of how really close the quarterbacks are in this class. I don't think there's one guy that really, well, to me, there's one guy that stands out above the rest. But I'm not an NFL scout and I'm not an NFL GM for a reason. So you can't particularly trust my word on that.
Right, right. But
Um,
back to what I was talking. That broke like right whenever I was talking. But yeah, I'm with you on the 16. If you're gonna not want to have the buys happen and just have them continuously play, then going up 16 makes sense. Yeah, you go back down to 8. You're punishing those teams that were just on the out, right there on the edge of getting in. Like SMU, Clemson, Wow, why can't I think of the other ones? Words are hard here. Indiana, I could go on Tennessee, blah blah blah. Um, but you're punishing those teams, which I don't think is what the committee should do.
Yeah,
Because if you're complaining about a team not getting in at that point and those teams not, then it feels like you're punishing even Alabama and those teams for the SEC that are 9 wins that you wanted
exactly.
to get in.
And now becomes
So
harder.
exactly. So yeah, if they really want to talk about expanding and not happen, then I think going up to 16 makes sense. And just another thing that I want, if they're going to start it this early on, I like them doing week by week where each team can have multiple home game like rounds. Round one can be home games. Round two can be home games. And then maybe rounds three from the rest of it can be bowl games. I think 2 rounds of home games for them could be really fun. I think it could lead to unique matchups. Again, we talked about what if Boise State got to host a home playoff game? What would that have been like against Penn State? How different would that have been? Um, Georgia hosting Notre Dame. They've been there before, but still what that could have been. Um, you know, Arizona State hosting Texas. Um, that could have been fun, I think.
Yeah.
And then Oregon hosting Ohio State again. I think that could be fun. So there's an argument for that, but like I said, I don't see a point in dropping down the teams. If you're going to go from 4 to 12, I don't see why they wouldn't move it up to 16.
Yeah, and just final note on it. I actually agree with you. I don't think that there's inherently anything wrong with the buy. I'm not against the buy, like you said. It's a chance to recover and get back into it. Um, but this is going to be where a team like a Georgia or an Oregon is going to say, "Hey, had we been able to play a week before that or 2 weeks before that, maybe we don't lose this game." Is that a fair argument? I don't think so because if Oregon really didn't want the bye, why did they not play their backups in the Big Ten championship and lose to Penn State?
Yeah. And also, I mean, they there's a difference between not coming ready to play and just getting dominated. There's
Mhm.
a difference there.
Absolutely.
Oregon looked like a team that was ready to play. They just were no match for Ohio State during that Rose Bowl game. Georgia defense came ready to play, and it was a competitive game, but just a spark for Notre Dame happened there. So it's not like, they weren't ready to play. They just got beat by good teams because that's what having more teams in the playoff leads to happening. It's a common thing. I don't get why people think of it that way.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. People think of it as like worst teams getting in, the worst teams getting in. Well, clearly it's not. Um, well, we don't have a single conference champion left. So,
Almost like not all the conference champions were the best. Texas, made the conference championship, lost to Ohio State. They were a talented team. We all knew it. We all knew they were a talented team. Notre Dame, we all knew they were a talented team based on how they finished the year there. Penn State, we all knew they were a talented team. I mean, I don't know what else to say to that. I got nothing else.
yeah. So let's talk about these quarterfinal games, and we'll start with Penn State taking down Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, 31-14. And then to me, I was actually impressed with Maddox Madsen's performance. He did have the one interception, but I thought he looked pretty composed until the pick. I actually wish Boise State had thrown the ball a little bit more. After the first couple drives, I mean, it was just Penn State 8 in the box, which was the right way to go. They just didn't take enough chances. And I think that just kind of they sagged along close. It was a close game until after the pick and then the touchdown. But they were just kind of dragging along. Penn State did a great job with their game plan, not allowing the run to become explosive in this game. But to me, Ashton Genty was still impressive in this game. This is game film that is insane. This is great for the NFL draft. It took 4 Penn State defensive players each play to stop his momentum, and it took him more than that. It took 6 guys to bring him to the ground. Um, There were just plays where four guys would hit him, and sure, he didn't go anywhere. But nobody could take him down. And look, at the end of the day, Ashton Genty would rather have just run for a touchdown every time he touched the ball. And I understand that him not getting in the end zone sucks. But that's not entirely on him. He still ran for over 100 yards in this game. I think this is what's so. This tells us all, should tell everybody how great Ashton Genty is. He ran for over 100 yards in this game, and people instantly went out to call him a bum, a loser. Not this is what happens when you don't play community colleges. One, again, he diced up Oregon earlier this year, and two, how many running backs have run for over 100 yards against Penn State this year?
Not many. I think the average was under 100-yard rushing yards per game total against Penn State, let alone one singular 100-yard rusher in a game. So
And that's with eight guys every play. Every time he had the ball, eight guys were on their way to get him, and he still ran for over 100 yards. But I just think that tells us how great Ashton Genty is, and for some people, they just won't appreciate it. But a guy rushes for over 100 yards against a defense that has not allowed very many 100-yard rushers, and it's a bad thing. 100 is just he's so good that 100 is below the expectation. Um,
if that's not a flex, I don't know what is. It's like, well, he only had 104 rushing yards against Penn State. Excuse me, only 104 yards. No, well, that he was not the reason they lost the game. The reason they lost this game was all the things we questioned about Penn State, their ability to stop the run game for their defense. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen had field days against their run. They ran the football all over that defense. And he talked about Madsen. He played well passing ball. He threw three interceptions still, though. And the
yeah,
turnovers, again, which credit to Penn State's defense in both their wins this year, they have forced in both their wins in the playoff this year, they have forced turnovers on multiple interceptions on the quarterbacks. And that's what's gotten them out to these good leads where they've been able to play ahead, run the football, not have to really make Drew Aller win the game with his arm. That's what's led to success for them. And Drew Aller's just been taking advantage of when he's had it, and he's played well. But I mean, only threw for 171 yards because that's all he had to do. So yeah, it was great for Penn State. I mean, people act like this final score is a blowout. This was a 3-point game in the second half. I want to remind people, and how close this was to being a 3-point game in the final 8 minutes of the game. I want to remind people of that. You mentioned it. That interception happens. Penn State runs the clock. They run for the touchdown. The game's over at that point. But this was a close game, and listen, this is a good effort from Penn State. And like you said, Ashton Genty, there have not been many guys that had run for 100 yards, let alone total against Penn State for a group of running backs. So to have 104 yards himself, and like you said, the four guys to bring him down, that's the thing I kept on seeing because you like so many Ashton Genty things on Twitter. You get on the good side of Ashton Genty Twitter,
yeah.
and everyone was like, my goodness, look at that. Four guys to bring him down. Yeah, it was great. It sucks that it had to end this way, but yeah, I was impressed with Ashton Genty. And before a certain team made their move, I thought it was a shoot with their coaching staff. I thought it was a shoe in for him to go to one team. Now I'm really curious to see who looks to get him because he will not get past the 15th pick in the NFL draft.
No, there's no way. And for those of you snap counters out there, Ashton Genty has more career snaps in the college football playoff than Travis Hunter. That takes us to Texas versus Arizona in the Peach Bowl. Texas survives a late rally, barely, to win 39-31 in second overtime. Look, this looked like a slaughter early. Um, every once in a while, Arizona State would have a big play, but Scatabo was struggling. He was on the sideline. There was arguing, yelling. It was all competitive, all, trying to make each other better, but it didn't look good. And in this second half, this Arizona State team came alive. Great drives, tied this game. Cam Scatabo did just about everything. He threw a touchdown. He rushed a touchdown. He had one of the craziest catches I've ever seen while having his head ripped off. Um, it was just incredible. Um, Then the most egregious targeting foul in the history of college football occurs. And I want to give a shout out to Trevor Renfro, who I was texting during this game, longtime listener of the Bull Take podcast. I'm not trying to air him out here. We sometimes we have some different views, and this was not an argument. But I do appreciate his opinion. He was asking me what I thought about the targeting. I thought it was targeting. I mean, by the book, that's a targeting. And he said, "Well, he's like it does." He said a replay makes everything look worse. He said it probably meets the criteria in the rule book. He's like, "But I don't like it because I don't know what the safety's supposed to do." He's like, "Targeting is in the rule book to prevent like egregious, like just absolutely vile, intentional assaults." And I agree with that opinion to an extent. That's definitely part of the reason the rule's in place. And so he just felt like, it wasn't intentional and it should have been called. And it wasn't called. They picked up the flag. But my opinion is that's not the only reason that targeting exists. Targeting also exists to protect players' safety. So even when it's incidental contact, it doesn't incidental contact, like it being intentional doesn't rule it out. It only just adds more evidence if the play is intentional. But incidental contact doesn't mean that it's not targeting. Targeting is there to protect players' health and safety, and I agree that the angle he took and the position he put himself in, that's the only thing he could do as the safety. But my response would be you at this point, targeting is not new. You've been taught ways to hit a player, and if you think you're going to get a targeting, then maybe don't hit the guy. It was crown of the helmet. It was a defenseless receiver. It checks all the boxes. So incidental or contact or not, personally, I think that it was a targeting. But to me, it doesn't matter because this game was not decided by a targeting, even though it felt like it was going to be. Shout out Burt Auburn. Um, yeah, just a ultra reliable kicker for Texas all year. Just can't knock down a kick at the end of this game. And not just all year, but all his whole career at Texas, he's been ultra reliable. Um, and then this overtime happens, and fourth and what, 13 in overtime. And I appreciate what Arizona State was trying to do. They had been getting pressure on Quinn Ewers, and that's something he struggled with a lot this season is pressure. When pressure gets through to Quinn Ewers, it's tough. But the thing is, that's when pressure gets through because this is a great offensive line. They brought the house to try and force a mistake, try and force them to make something quick happen. Unfortunately, this incredibly talented wide receiving core got wide open, and the offensive line held up for as long as it needed to for a beautiful strike. And then Arizona State sputtered out in the second overtime. But this was a phenomenal game, and Cam Scatterbo deserves his flowers, even though Texas did a great job to kind of overcome a lot of things that could have swung the momentum Arizona State's way heading into that overtime and even second overtime period.
Right. I just like to point this out. Cam Scatterbo since day one. I just want to point that out. Um, it was that fourth quarter was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
Yeah,
Watching Cam Scatterbo literally force overtime by himself, pretty much. So it was a great sight to see. And listen, about that missed field goal. I mean, that's on Sarkeesian. I mean, you've seen the clip of his like hands on the kicker's shoulders. That's putting way too much pressure on the kid. That's putting
yeah,
way too much pressure on the kid. You don't want to put that much pressure on him. You don't even want to talk to him before going out there. You don't just go kick it. You got it. You don't want to put your hands on the shoulders like, look at me. You got this. You got this. You make this. We're going on.
yeah,
That puts so many bad thoughts in the mind of a kicker. I don't think people realize how much of kicking is a mental game of as you are locked in, and that's what caused that. I think. And look, the targeting, and I don't think Trevor's point's wrong because since they made the rule where targeting equals an ejection or you can't play in the game anymore, um, everyone's hated it and not knowing what a targeting is. And that's why I've always said there needs to be, kind of like a flagrant foul system
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
in college. I've said that since whenever they started making the target, I think like 2014, 2015,
Yeah.
is like, a flagrant foul system. Like if it's not incidental, then just we agree to move on from it or give them, like a 10, 15-yard penalty for it. And then if it is on purpose, leading to the crown of the helmet, then that's an automatic ejection. That I get with. So I don't blame Trevor for that opinion because they have yet to really make an official rule. They're just like, well, he hit him with the crown of the helmet. That's got to be targeting. No, that's, and so, but like you said, and overtime happened. It was 4th and 13. This is where the game was lost. As soon as Texas scored that touchdown to get the overtime, I knew Arizona State lost. I knew they did.
Yeah.
Because that was the moment. All the momentum's there. 4th and 13. I get what they were trying to do. They wanted to get the ball to Quinn Ewers' hand fast. But you talked about this wide receiving core. How about the O line for Texas? There was no pressure at all on Quinn Ewers on that throw. And we talked about him struggling to throw down the field. When you don't have anybody in your face, it gets a lot easier to throw the ball down the field. That's what happened there. It was a great throw. And yeah, it sucks for Arizona State, but they lost in that moment. They had the opportunity to win the game there, and they just didn't, which made it absolutely terrible because I was rooting for them. But you talked about it. Texas, after losing all momentum, you felt like Arizona State's got us in the bag. Not so fast with Quinn Ewers them, and then the defense stepping up, getting the interception. But Cam Scadaboo might have made himself a couple extra $1 million in this NFL draft with his performance against Texas in that game because he was so much fun to watch, and I'm going to miss him dearly in college football.
Yeah. And I think, not just in college football, we've seen the resurgence of the running back, but we're starting to see it in the NFL. I think this is the perfect time to be Ashton Jeanty or Cam Scadabo or anybody trying to rise up these ranks in the NFL or in the draft. Um, Saquon Barkley has the potential to actually bring home an MVP this year. And if he did, that would change the running back position exponentially in the modern NFL. That if you can run the ball and you can build a system to run the ball, boy, oh boy, you can still manufacture some MVPs at that position. Um, but then let's head into Ohio State beating down Oregon 41-21 in the Rose Bowl. And look, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. This was an ugly game. That after like 5 minutes in the third quarter, I just stopped watching. Um, I I thought the way that Oregon started to end the first half, I was like, well, it's still a long way to go, but you've given yourself some momentum. And then they came out flat in the second half. It just It was ugly. This is not the Oregon team that was expected, but they just found a way to lose this game, and it feels all too common of the Dan Lanning era. Probably the biggest issue Oregon's had is just in a game that it feels like they should win. They just drop the ball, and they're just not there. Um, Now, usually it's a much closer game when it happens. Usually it's, one decision, but it just feels like some of these big time games to make this team a national champion or not a national champion, but to put this team in the college football playoff or win the Pac-12 championship. They just haven't gotten the job done. And that's a little bit disappointing. I don't think it's anything that Dan Lanning should be worried about, especially not right now with the expanded playoffs. Um, but it's just tough to see as an Oregon fan um, that this team just gets so close and they have the talent to do it and to win it all, and they just can't get the job done.
Well, I mean, the big takeaway from me in this game, where it was won and lost, line of scrimmage. Line of scrimmage was dominated by Ohio State. Offensive line was incredible. I think Will Howard got sacked one time, but 181 yards on the ground to go along with his 300 in the air. Hard to beat Ohio State when they have that. And also for Oregon, leading rusher was 7 carries for 14 yards in this game. And when you look at the stats also added from the sacks with Dylan Gabriel, they finished with negative 23 yards on the ground. They never had a shot in this game. They never had a shot. And again, that's unfortunate. People talk about the bye week and never. There's talking about the bye week and being rusty, and then just getting flat out put on your butt and humiliated in a big game. That's what happened here. Oregon had no shot after the first quarter. There was no shot. This game was over after the first quarter. I don't care that Oregon made it 34-15. This game was over after the first quarter. They dominated, and again, credit to them. I think you talked about it and we talked about it. They tried to play Michigan's game in that final game of the regular season. And these last two games in the playoff, the coaches, everyone talked here, it's like, screw trying to play someone else's game. Let's play what we're best at. And what they're best at is a balanced offensive attack, throwing the football down the field while also having success running the football. And that's led to domination in both the playoff games thus far. And I mean, we're in the Final Four, but it's hard to find a team that has earned this trip to the Final Four more than Ohio State has.
Yeah, especially with the way they came into this whole thing. Um, and then we've got our final quarterfinal game. Before we get into it, it's impossible to talk about this game without what happened before it. So thoughts and prayers for those affected. I know we did it before, but it feels like talking about this game. It's important to say it again.
Yeah.
But that's all we'll talk of that. Look, Notre Dame came out and at the end of the first half, into that second half, they became, I don't know, to me, the best team in the country. Um, it was 3-3. I was sweating it out. And then it's a field goal, a strip sack, into a passing touchdown, into a kickoff return touchdown to make the game 20-3. All of that occurred in about 1 minute of game time. Um, and it just absolutely changed the landscape of this entire game. Look, I said it. I think we both said it. Gunnar Stockton was not going to be able to handle this Notre Dame pressure. He just wasn't. Uh, Look, I saw what I needed to see in the Texas game. The one time Texas got through, he almost threw a pick six to lose the game, to lose the SEC championship. He's talented. He started off the game very impressive. He's got a bright future, especially if Carson Beck does leave Georgia. He'll be, I think, the guy there. I think he's earned that with the way he played at the end of this season. But when I when I looked at that, this defense forces the most turnovers in the country. The defensive line is insane. And that's what we did. We limited the rushing attack and we forced Gunnar Stockton to make the big plays. And that ended up winning us the game. Just unbelievable coaching from Marcus Freeman. Look, year three, I I haven't been anti Marcus Freeman by any means. I love him. But the Northern Illinois loss was tough to swallow. It's the one thing about the Marcus Freeman tenure I wish I could change is the drop in some of these easy games or these should be wins. It was the Marshall game in his first year. It was the Ohio State game last year. A game where not an easy game, but a game that we won. We won the game, and then we gave Ohio State another drive. We passed the ball and gave Ohio State another drive. Um, and then the Northern Illinois game this year. Yeah, it was just the one thing I wish I could change. And after that game, I thought we have to win out the rest of the season. But if we've lost to Northern Illinois, I don't know if that can happen. And then even then, what if they just leave us out just because we didn't play a conference championship and our losses to Northern Illinois? And I couldn't blame. But after that, this team turned into something else. Um, And so hats off to Marcus Freeman. He's coached his butt off. He's put together a fantastic team. And it's something that I've enjoyed watching week in and week out since that Northern Illinois loss. And unfortunately, he's giving me hope that this team can win a national championship.
I mean, listen, it was. I mean, let's just say it like it is. Neither team offensively could do anything because the game played out exactly like we said, that this was a defensive battle, and it would come down to taking advantage of key moments. Notre Dame got the field goal to go up 6-3, and then the strip sack happened to make it 13-3, and then the kickoff. After that, the game was over. The game was over because neither offense was able to really get anything going. Georgia had the touchdown after that, but neither offense could consistently get something going in the game. And once Notre Dame got 20-3, I thought they were in control. But credit you, I talked about before that even the game against Indiana was the special teams unit, and that special teams because it was only 13-3 at halftime. It was still in range for Georgia to get back, and then that kickoff return to start the second half really just blew the game wide open. It blew it wide open. Georgia had no chance in that after that. But yeah, for Georgia, I mean, the offense just wasn't clicking. And I'm not blaming this on Gunnar Stockton because, I mean, this was his first. Let's remember this is his first career start. No matter how much ESPN tried to hype him up to you, it was his first career start against one of the better defenses in college football. Of course, you're going to struggle against that. Any quarterback would. I don't care if it was Carson Beck out there. He would have struggled against this Notre Dame defense too. So, um, yeah, it was a good win for Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's winning the way that they have to with them. Riley Leonard only had 90 yards passing in this game, in case people forgot. Only 90 yards passing, but the passing yards were needed. He completed them whenever they needed to, and the running game was good as it could be. And listen, I want to talk about the 4th and 1. I think it was what 5 minutes ago in the game, 5 6 minutes left. That took some major, you know what, to make that call because I really didn't think they were going to go for it, just draw them off sides. And then Georgia, of course, jumps off and then to go for it after that. So credit to Marcus Freeman and them for that. And with Georgia, look, you talked about Gunnar Stockton is going to have a full off season, we presume, of being the guy there at Georgia. And also, Austin, I'm doing some more reading. Carson Beck is not doing this for NFL draft. He is out of the NFL draft talks and is just going into another school college. Apparently, the
Oh,
leader for him right now is Miami. With Cam Ward going to the NFL draft, Miami is the current favorite. Obviously, other schools are going to go after him too. But yeah, we'll see how that leads for Georgia next year with Gunnar Stockton. But I mean, Notre Dame took advantage of the key opportunity with that strip sack to kind of blow this game open, and they did. That's the story of the game.
yeah, absolutely. But look, we talked about the quarterfinal games. There's only one thing left to talk about. Let's look at preview and pick these semifinal games. And let's start with the one that's tonight. Notre Dame versus Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Um, Look, I think this is going to be a similar kind of game that we saw Notre Dame and Georgia. These are going to be two good defenses trying to limit each other. Where I really see, obviously, we know where I'm game picking here. I'm going Notre Dame, but I'm going to give my sound reasoning as I always do. Notre Dame's physical front, I think, is going to limit Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Um, and they've done it so far against teams that like to use the rushing attack. Georgia and Indiana both like to run the ball. Georgia not so much this year, but still they needed to get the run game going to get Gunner Stockton comfortable, and they couldn't do that. Um, the one thing that might present some trouble is it's a two-headed backfield might be a little bit tougher to slow those guys down entirely. But I still think they're going to slow down the run and force Drew Aller to make more throws. Um, Look, Drew Aller's been great with Penn State. But the big thing is he's had so much help from his defense, especially in the college football playoff, so much help from his defense and so much help from his running backs that really he just needs to make a few key throws throughout the game and the passing yards stay low, the attempts stay low. I think Notre Dame's going to force him into a situation where he's going to have to throw the ball a lot more than he's used to. He's going to have to take some bigger chances. And I think that that's where that number one turnover forcing defense in the country comes into play to make things happen, set Notre Dame up in some big spots. And like we did last week, we're going to execute in special teams. We're going to execute in the short field. And we're going to be heading for a national championship.
Yeah. Again, defense, and wait for it, more defense. Describes this game. Two teams are going to want to run the football. Very simple. My thing for the game is whichever quarterback has the most success passing the football will win the game. They're both going to want to run the football a lot. They're going to use the quarterbacks in the run game. It'll be two really solid defenses. It will basically be like Notre Dame and Georgia, what we expected going into that, which was who can capitalize in those right moments will determine it. Notre Dame did that last week. We'll see how it goes. But like you said, it comes down to like I said, passing game is the key. If Notre Dame can force turnovers, then that's going to get them. The defense is forcing turnovers and passing game defense. That's what's going to determine this game tonight. Listen, if I have to go off of that strategy in favor of that, I would lean more Penn State. Nothing against Ryan Leonard when it comes to passing the ball, but if I had to choose a quarterback that I think would have more success passing the ball, it would be Drew Aller. But then you remember every single time we get Penn State in these big games against teams with really great defenses, the passing game is literally nothing. It's screen passes, 2 yard routes. We've seen Drew Aller can throw the ball deep, but in these big games, they don't do it. I think you'll see a very conservative Penn State offense, and if that's the case, then I'm going to roll with Notre Dame tonight. Um, but it comes down if Penn State's aggressive offensively, they could win this game. I think with Drew Aller in his arm, but I just don't see Penn State playing up to that. So I'll take Notre Dame as well tonight.
Then we've got Ohio State versus Texas in the Cotton Bowl. To me, in this game, Texas has been phenomenal on offense all season. When they can get going, when they can keep the pocket clean, this is a tough team to stop. This is a lot of guys on this team that are going to go to the NFL and make lots of money. But with Ohio State, they assembled practically the Avengers in the transfer portal. They put together a team of guys that have some great experience, and they wanted to go all the way. That was obviously the game plan. And when the season started, it was a talk of can these guys play as a team? These are a lot of great individual players. Can they play as a team? And, they had a lot of success, but in their couple key losses, there wasn't enough team play. You had the loss in Oregon, which was a close game. And then the Michigan game was just a complete collapse. And it felt like maybe these guys just couldn't get it done. They couldn't put it together. But in these two games in the college football playoff, this team has played like a team and they have played to their strengths. Like you said, they're balancing the ball, they're throwing it, they're running it. They've got a great two-headed backfield. Will Howard making great decisions right now. To me, that's been incredibly impressive the way they've snapped everything together. And had a great, short memory. Forget everything that happened before the college football playoff because now it doesn't matter anymore. Um, and that's been so great of them. I think this is such a loaded, star-filled Ohio State team that I can't imagine this game going anywhere else. I'd rather Texas win this game, so if Notre Dame makes the national championship, they can beat another SEC school and they can say, "Take this, Brian Kelly," because apparently you can't win and you can't compete with the SEC at Notre Dame. Um, but I think it's going to be Ohio State. I think the stars are finally shining bright, and this is right now the best team left in the college football playoff.
Right. Well, with Ohio State, to me, the key is them getting off to a good start because they
Yeah,
got up 21-0 in Tennessee and Oregon before the other team could even react. So they've gotten off to good starts. So this is something that'll happen again. If they don't get off to a hot start offensively, how does this game play out? That's where I'm curious how that goes. Texas, they got to be able to run the football. They struggled running the ball against Arizona State. And I think with Ohio State, the way they dominated the line of scrimmage against Oregon in that Rose Bowl, and like we just said, red hot, they've dominated. They know what they can do offensively and the defense playing as well as it has. I brought him up whenever he got hired there a few years ago, but Jim Knowles, what he has done there defensively, transforming it completely has been awesome to see. But yeah, I think with Texas not being able to run the ball, I definitely think that it will go in the favor of Ohio State.
yeah, I'm completely with you there.
You look like you had a shocked look on your face.
Yes, sorry, I was reading a text message and it was actually not that shocking. I was just making a crazy face.
I thought you were
Um,
like, did you just receive like the biggest news of your life or
I
something? I'm
wish
like,
I had just received the biggest news of my life. Unfortunately, I was just making a
yeah,
face. But yeah, I just don't know how this goes any other way but Ohio State victory. Like you said, and like I said, Texas has the pieces to make something happen in this game. They just haven't been consistent enough to me. That's the thing. And I think Ohio State's just so red hot right now that they're going to be
my
tough
big
to
thing
stop.
also is we have yet to see Texas play their best game.
Agreed.
They will start games super slow, and then by the end of it, they'll or no, my bad, it's vice versa. I'm thinking of another team. They will start games really well, and then they can't finish off the opponent. They haven't played a full game to this point in the season, and they're going to need to play a full game if they beat Ohio State. So they're going to need their best performance of the season. Good news for them, it's in Texas, but like I said, bad news is they are playing like you said the Avengers, so it will not
Yeah.
be an easy task.
Yeah. This is a beatdown. Um, Finally, let's take it into our bet of the week. Not a lot of bets in college football to make this week. Um, but mine's real simple. Taking one out of your playbook. Notre Dame, Penn State under 45. I think that's at this point feels obvious. Notre Dame is going to do everything they can to chew the clock. And these are two great defenses who are going to try and run the ball. I think this stays a very low scoring affair. First to 11 wins.
Yeah, we might as well just double your money on it because I don't see anything from Ohio State, Texas that I'm 100% comfortable in. The under for Ohio State, for Notre Dame and Penn State, I felt comfortable and locked in on
Yeah.
since Notre Dame won the game. I'm like the under's there. What it's gonna be the play. So you might as well double your money bet for the under on Penn State and Notre Dame, so you can win even more money because you got two people that feel very confident in happening. Yeah, first one to 20 points is going to win this game pretty much, and
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
someone gets to 20 in this game.
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen. In all honesty, I hope so. I hope maybe Notre Dame just scores 45 and we get out of here and win the game. But
Or they win
yeah,
44 to nothing, so the under does hit.
yeah.
So
So the
that
under does hit.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, I don't know really any other way to me that this game or the score is going to go. This feels like the safest bet we've had all year.
I would agree. We're being pansies this week, but I don't care because it's an easy one to bet. So go with it.
Absolutely. Well, big night for some of us. Um, so that'll do it here for the Bold Take podcast. That's Austin Waiter. I'm Austin Hill. Watch the games tonight. Be ready for us next week when we talk about the national championship. And that'll do it for us here at the Bold Take podcast. We want to thank you for listening.